Hi everyone. Welcome to English Story School. This is the story of Eric Thomas, a man who transformed faith into a weapon of resilience, rising from the depths of homelessness to become one of the most electrifying motivational speakers in the world. But how did he do it? Let's dive deep into his journey and uncover the untapped power of faith. Imagine standing on the edge of your dreams, staring into a void of impossibility. Would you leap, trusting in something greater, or step back, shackled by fear? Chapter 1. The Fall from Hope to Homeless. Eric Thomas wasn't always the electrifying speaker who commands rooms with his words and inspires millions across the globe. His journey began in one of the darkest corners of life, where hope was a luxury he couldn't afford. Imagine this: a teenager, barely out of his childhood, wandering the cold streets of Detroit. The city's harsh winters biting into his skin, hunger gnawing at his stomach, and despair looming over his every step. Life didn't just knock Eric down, it seemed determined to keep him there. He was a high school dropout with no direction, no guidance, and no plan. The world around him had given up on him, and for a while, he had almost given up on himself. But let's rewind for a moment and understand how he got here. Eric was born into a working-class family. Like many kids, he had dreams, ambitions, and the kind of innocence that shields you from life's brutal realities. However, his home life was far from stable. Conflict and hardship were constants in his early years. The tension at home often pushed him to the streets, where he found himself slipping further and further into a world of uncertainty. School wasn't a refuge either. He struggled to find a sense of belonging, and soon, the system that was supposed to lift him up became another weight dragging him down. Dropping out of high school felt like hitting rock bottom, but in truth, it was just the beginning of his struggles. With no diploma, no job prospects, and no safety net, Eric found himself living on the streets. Picture this. He's huddled in an abandoned building, the cold cement floor his bed, and a threadbare blanket his only shield against the icy wind. Nights were long and unforgiving. Hunger was his constant companion, and every day felt like a battle for survival. He scavenged for food wherever he could find it: trash cans, leftovers from strangers, anything that could keep him going. Society had already written him off, branding him a failure before he even had a chance to prove otherwise. But here's the thing about rock bottom. It's often where the seeds of transformation are planted. For Eric, it wasn't a thunderous revelation or a dramatic moment of change. It was a whisper, a faint, almost imperceptible voice inside him that refused to be silenced. In those dark, lonely nights, when despair threatened to consume him, this voice would quietly say, "This isn't the end." It wasn't loud, and it certainly didn't drown out the noise of his struggles, but it was there. It was persistent, and it was enough. Faith, for Eric, didn't start as a grand belief in a higher power or an unwavering confidence in his abilities. It was more like a fragile ember, barely glowing in the harsh winds of his reality. But even the smallest ember can ignite a fire if it's nurtured. This tiny spark of faith became his anchor, something he could hold on to when everything else seemed to slip through his fingers. It told him that his circumstances, no matter how dire, didn't have to define his future. Eric's nights were filled with self-reflection. Without distractions or comforts, he was left alone with his thoughts, and it was in these moments that he began to confront himself. He started questioning the narrative society had imposed on him. Was he really destined to fail? Did his past mistakes have to dictate his future? Slowly, he began to realize that while he couldn't change the hand he'd been dealt, he could change how he played it. This shift in mindset didn't happen overnight, but it marked the beginning of a new chapter. There's something profoundly humbling about hitting rock bottom. It strips away pretenses and forces you to face the raw, unfiltered reality of who you are. For Eric, It was a wake-up call, a harsh, unrelenting reminder that life wouldn't hand him success, but it would offer him opportunities if he was willing to fight for them. He began to see his struggles not as punishments, but as lessons. Each cold night, each pang of hunger, and each moment of rejection became fuel for his inner fire. Yet it's important to remember that Eric's faith didn't immediately solve his problems. He was still homeless. He still didn't have a clear path forward. But what he did have was hope, a fragile, precious thing that gave him the strength to keep moving. And sometimes, that's all it takes. Just one small step forward. Just one more day of holding on. Eric's story, at this point, wasn't one of triumph, but survival. And survival, as mundane as it may seem, is its own kind of victory when the world seems intent on breaking you. His faith was the lifeline that kept him afloat in a sea of uncertainty. It was the quiet reminder that no matter how dark the night, dawn would come. As Eric would later reflect, faith is not about having all the answers. It's about believing that answers exist, even when you can't see them. For him, this belief became the foundation upon which he would build a life far beyond what anyone, including himself, could have imagined. Little did he know, this was just the beginning of a journey that would inspire millions. But for now, it was enough to keep him going. And sometimes, that's all you need. Chapter 2. The Spark, a Chance Encounter. Sometimes, life introduces us to people who become catalysts for our transformation. Individuals who see the light in us even when we're surrounded by darkness. For Eric Thomas, this person was a pastor, a man who walked into Eric's life at a moment when he needed it most. Eric had been wandering aimlessly, carrying the weight of his circumstances and the bitterness of a life that felt unfair. He had become comfortable blaming the world for his struggles, using it as a shield against his own accountability. But that shield was about to be shattered. Their meeting wasn't grand or dramatic. It happened in a small, modest church, the kind of place Eric had passed by 100 times without a second thought. But this time was different. Something, or perhaps someone, nudged him to step inside. As he sat there, blending into the shadows, the pastor approached him. There was no judgment in his eyes, only a quiet curiosity and an unshakable belief that this young man, despite his rough edges, had potential. The pastor didn't offer pity or empty platitudes. Instead, he delivered a dose of raw, unfiltered truth. You can't blame the world forever. If you want change, it starts with you. The words hit Eric like a sledgehammer. At first, they stung. How could this man, who barely knew him, claim to understand his pain? But as the days passed, those words began to echo in Eric's mind. They weren't just a challenge. They were an invitation to stop being a victim of his circumstances and start becoming the architect of his future. For Eric, this encounter marked a turning point. Until that moment, his faith had been a fragile ember, a quiet whisper urging him to keep going. But now, it began to grow into something stronger. The pastor's words ignited a spark of self-awareness in Eric. He realized that faith wasn't just about believing in a higher power. It was also about believing in himself, in his ability to overcome, to learn, and to rebuild. Faith, he learned, was an active choice, a commitment to trust the process, even when the outcome was uncertain. This newfound perspective didn't make Eric's life easier, but it gave him direction. For the first time in years, he began to dream, not in the abstract, but with a sense of purpose. He decided to go back to school, a daunting prospect for someone who had once been labeled a failure. Eric knew it wouldn't be easy. He knew he would face judgment, self-doubt, and the temptation to quit. But he also knew that staying where he was, both physically and mentally, was no longer an option. Returning to school was like stepping into a foreign land. Eric was older than most of his classmates, and his past felt like a weight he couldn't shake. But he pushed forward one step at a time. He stayed up late studying, often sacrificing sleep just to keep up. He worked part-time jobs to pay for books and supplies, juggling responsibilities that would have overwhelmed most people. And through it all, he leaned on the faith that had been reignited by the pastor's words. Every time he felt like giving up, he reminded himself, "If I want change, it starts with me." The pastor didn't disappear from Eric's life after that first conversation. He became a mentor, a guide who helped Eric navigate the challenges of his new path. Their relationship wasn't always smooth. The pastor was known for his tough love approach, often pushing Eric out of his comfort zone. But Eric came to understand that growth requires discomfort. Every challenge the pastor presented was an opportunity for Eric to confront his fears, to test his resilience, and to strengthen his faith. One of the most profound lessons Eric learned during this time was the power of accountability. The pastor often reminded him that while faith could guide him, it was his actions that would determine his success. Faith without action, he explained, was like a car without fuel. It had the potential to move, but it would never go anywhere without effort. Eric took this lesson to heart. He began setting goals, creating plans, and holding himself accountable for his progress. Slowly but surely, he started to see results. But the journey wasn't without setbacks. There were moments when Eric's past threatened to catch up with him. Old habits, old doubts, and old voices telling him he wasn't good enough. During these times, he leaned heavily on the lessons he had learned from the pastor. He reminded himself that setbacks weren't failures. They were opportunities to learn and grow. With each obstacle he overcame, his confidence grew. He started to believe not only in the power of faith, but also in his ability to create a better future. Eric's decision to go back to school wasn't just about earning a diploma. It was a statement, a declaration that he was no longer willing to let his past define him. It was the first step on a long, grueling journey of self-reinvention. And while the path ahead was still uncertain, Eric knew one thing for sure. He was no longer the same person who had walked into that church. He was stronger, hungrier, and more determined than ever to turn his life around. This chapter of Eric's life wasn't about grand achievements or public recognition. It was about laying the foundation for a transformation that would inspire millions. It was about learning to trust the process, even when the road seemed endless. And most importantly, it was about discovering that the spark of faith, once ignited, could light the way through even the darkest of times. Chapter 3. The Climb. Faith meets action. Faith alone doesn't move mountains. Action does. Eric Thomas came to understand this truth in the most profound way. His journey wasn't a tale of instant success or miraculous interventions. It was a story of relentless effort, determination, and the unyielding belief that every step forward, no matter how small, brought him closer to his dreams. After making the life-changing decision to go back to school, Eric knew the path ahead would be anything but easy. He was entering uncharted territory, stepping into a world that had once written him off. But Eric didn't let fear dictate his choices. Instead, he let faith guide him, transforming it from a quiet whisper into a driving force. The first milestone on his journey was earning his GED, a task that demanded more than just academic effort. It required a complete shift in mindset. Eric had to unlearn years of self-doubt and replace it with the belief that he was capable of achieving great things. Earning his GED was a victory, but it was only the beginning. Eric knew that if he wanted to create lasting change, he needed to aim higher. So, he enrolled in college, a decision that felt both exhilarating and overwhelming. College wasn't just a place for academics. It was a battlefield where Eric fought against the ghosts of his past. He was older than most of his peers, and the weight of his circumstances often made him feel like an outsider. But instead of letting these feelings consume him, Eric turned them into fuel for his ambition. Balancing college with the realities of his life was no small feat. Eric juggled multiple jobs to pay for tuition, books, and basic living expenses. He worked as a janitor, cleaned classrooms, and even took on odd jobs to make ends meet. His days started before dawn and ended long after midnight. While his peers were out enjoying their youth, Eric was studying under the dim light of his apartment, fueled by little more than instant noodles and sheer determination. Each late night, each sleepless hour, was a testament to his hunger, not just for success, but for transformation. But the climb wasn't smooth. There were failures, exams he didn't pass, opportunities he missed, and moments when exhaustion nearly broke him. There were setbacks that made him question whether the struggle was worth it. Eric often found himself on the brink of giving up, his mind plagued by doubts and fears. But every time life knocked him down, his faith pushed him to rise again. It was during these moments that Eric's mantra became his lifeline. You don't have to be smarter or more talented than others. You just have to be hungrier. And hungry, he was hungry for success, for change, and for a purpose greater than himself. Faith, Eric learned, wasn't just about believing in the possibility of a better future. It was about taking action, even when the odds seemed insurmountable. It was about showing up day after day and putting in the work, even when progress felt painfully slow. He realized that faith without effort was empty, but faith paired with relentless action was unstoppable. Eric's hunger for success wasn't driven by selfish ambition. It was rooted in something deeper, a desire to break the cycle of poverty and hopelessness that had defined so much of his life. He wanted to prove to himself and to the world that circumstances don't define destiny. With each step forward, Eric began to see the fruits of his labor. His grades improved, his confidence grew, and for the first time in his life, he felt a sense of control over his future. One of the most pivotal moments during this period came when Eric began to recognize the power of his own story. He realized that his struggles weren't just obstacles, they were lessons. His journey wasn't just about overcoming adversity. It was about using that adversity to inspire others. Eric started sharing his experiences with those around him, classmates, co-workers, and even strangers. He spoke about the nights he spent homeless, the battles he fought within himself, and the faith that kept him going. And to his surprise, people listened. His words resonated because they were real, raw, and relatable. Eric's climb was also marked by moments of gratitude. Despite the challenges, he never lost sight of the blessings in his life. The mentor who believed in him, the opportunities that came his way, and the inner strength that had carried him this far. Gratitude became a cornerstone of his journey, a reminder that even in the midst of struggle, there was always something to be thankful for. As Eric continued to push forward, he began to develop a vision for his future. He didn't just want to succeed for himself. He wanted to be a beacon of hope for others who felt lost and forgotten. He wanted to show people that no matter how far they had fallen, they could always rise again. This vision became his driving force, motivating him to keep climbing, even when the journey felt endless. Eric's story during this time wasn't about perfection. It was about perseverance. It was about falling and getting back up, about facing fears and refusing to let them win. It was about embracing the climb, not as a punishment, but as a process of growth. And with every step he took, Eric proved that faith, when paired with action, has the power to move mountains, not instantly, but steadily, one determined step at a time. Chapter 4. The Breakthrough, Finding His Voice. During the relentless climb towards self-improvement, something profound happened to Eric Thomas. He discovered his voice. Not just the ability to speak, but the ability to connect, inspire, and ignite a spark in others. This wasn't a calculated move or a skill he intentionally set out to master. It was a natural evolution born out of his journey, a gift uncovered in the rawness of his struggles. Eric's first steps into speaking were far from glamorous. They began in small community centers, schools, and youth programs, where he shared his story with troubled teenagers who were walking the same precarious path he once did. These were not polished keynote addresses or meticulously crafted seminars. They were heartfelt conversations rooted in authenticity. Eric spoke not as an authority figure, but as someone who had been there, someone who understood the despair and the fight to rise above it. His early talks were unrefined and imperfect, but they had something far more important. They were real. Eric's energy was electric, his words raw and relatable, and his presence magnetic. He didn't sugarcoat his journey or hide the scars of his past. Instead, he used those scars as proof that healing, growth, and transformation were possible. People didn't just hear his words, they felt them. His speeches weren't lectures. They were lifelines thrown to those drowning in their own struggles. Eric's message resonated because it came from a place of deep understanding. He wasn't speaking from theory or textbook knowledge. He was speaking from experience. Every word carried the weight of battles fought and lessons learned. He didn't just talk about perseverance, he embodied it. He didn't just encourage others to have faith. He was a living testament to its power. This authenticity became his greatest asset, setting him apart from the countless voices offering empty motivation. As Eric's reputation grew, so did the size of his audience. What started as small, intimate gatherings soon turned into larger venues. He was invited to speak at schools, colleges, and corporate events, where his message transcended demographics and backgrounds. It didn't matter whether his audience was made up of struggling students, aspiring entrepreneurs, or seasoned professionals. Eric's words had a universal appeal. His story was proof that success wasn't reserved for the privileged or the lucky. It was attainable for anyone willing to put in the work. The breakthrough moment in Eric's speaking career came with the release of his viral video, "You Owe It to Yourself." It wasn't just a speech, it was a rallying cry. In the video, Eric spoke with an intensity that was impossible to ignore. His voice carried a sense of urgency, as if he were reaching through the screen to shake his viewers awake. The message was simple yet profound. If you want success, you have to want it as badly as you want to breathe. The video struck a chord with millions. It wasn't just a piece of content. It was a movement. People from all walks of life, students, athletes, entrepreneurs, and dreamers, found inspiration in Eric's words. For those who had felt defeated, his message was a spark of hope. For those who were stuck, it was a call to action. And for those who doubted themselves, it was a reminder that they were capable of more than they believed. But Eric's rise as a speaker wasn't just about the words he said. It was about the man behind the message. He wasn't a distant figure preaching from a pedestal. He was approachable, relatable, and unapologetically himself. Eric wasn't afraid to be vulnerable, to share his failures alongside his victories. This transparency made him not just a speaker, but a mentor, a guide, and a friend to his audience. His speaking style was unlike anything people had seen before. It was a blend of raw emotion, relentless energy, and undeniable authenticity. Eric didn't just deliver speeches. He created experiences. He would pace the stage, his voice rising and falling like a symphony, drawing his audience into his world. He used stories, analogies, and metaphors to make his points unforgettable. Every word, every gesture, was infused with passion and purpose. As Eric's career took off, he remained grounded in his mission. For him, speaking wasn't about fame or fortune. It was about impact. He saw every stage, every microphone, and every video as an opportunity to change lives. He wanted to reach the people who felt unseen, unheard, and unworthy, the people who, like him, had been told they would never amount to anything. Eric's journey to finding his voice was a testament to the power of faith and perseverance. It showed that even the most broken paths could lead to incredible destinations. But more importantly, it showed that our stories, no matter how messy or imperfect, have the power to inspire others. Eric's breakthrough wasn't just about becoming a speaker. It was about stepping into his purpose. And in doing so, he proved that the most powerful voice is the one that comes from the heart. Chapter 5. The Legacy, Faith Transformed. Today, Eric Thomas stands as a testament to the transformative power of faith, resilience, and purpose. His name is recognized globally. His voice fills sold-out stadiums, and his words resonate in boardrooms of Fortune 500 companies. But to reduce Eric's legacy to mere fame and success would be to miss the essence of who he is and what he represents. For Eric, true success has never been about wealth, accolades, or the size of his audience. It has always been about impact, the ability to give back, to inspire, and to empower others to believe in themselves the way he once believed in that quiet whisper of faith. Eric's journey from homelessness to global phenomenon isn't just an inspiring story. It's a blueprint for transformation. His life demonstrates that no matter where you start, no matter how bleak the circumstances, you have the power to change your destiny. It's not about avoiding failure, but learning to rise every time you fall. It's about understanding that faith isn't a guarantee of smooth sailing, but a promise of strength through the storm. As Eric's influence grew, so did his vision. He realized that his platform was more than a stage. It was a responsibility. He began dedicating himself to causes close to his heart, focusing on education, mentorship, and community upliftment. Eric's nonprofit initiatives aim to equip young people with the tools they need to succeed, both academically and personally. He believes in creating opportunities for those who feel forgotten, giving them the resources and encouragement to rewrite their narratives. One of the defining aspects of Eric's legacy is his ability to connect with people from all walks of life. Whether he's speaking to high school students, corporate executives, or professional athletes, his message transcends boundaries. It's not about where you come from. It's about where you're willing to go. Eric's authenticity allows him to meet people where they are, speaking to their struggles and aspirations in a way that feels personal and profound. Eric's viral videos and motivational speeches have reached millions, but he understands that true change happens one person at a time. He often shares stories of individuals who were inspired by his words to turn their lives around. Students who graduated against all odds, entrepreneurs who built businesses from scratch, and individuals who overcame personal demons to find purpose and fulfillment. These stories are the real measure of Eric's success. They remind him why he started and fuel his commitment to continue. For Eric, the power of faith isn't just about personal transformation. It's about collective impact. He believes that when individuals unlock their potential, they contribute to a ripple effect of positivity and progress. This belief drives his work with underserved communities, where he focuses on breaking cycles of poverty and hopelessness. He understands that systemic change requires more than motivation. It requires action, resources, and sustained effort. And Eric is committed to being part of that change. Despite his achievements, Eric remains grounded in humility. He often reflects on his journey, not with pride, but with gratitude. He knows that his story could have turned out differently. He knows the importance of the mentors, opportunities, and moments of faith that guided him along the way. And he never forgets the struggles that shaped him. This gratitude fuels his desire to give back, to lift others as he was lifted, and to be a beacon of hope for those still fighting their battles. Eric's legacy isn't just about inspiring individuals to dream big. It's about teaching them to act boldly. He challenges his audience to move beyond excuses, to take ownership of their lives, and to embrace the grind. His mantra, "You owe it to yourself," is more than a catchphrase, it's a philosophy. It's a reminder that success isn't handed out. It's earned through effort, resilience, and faith. One of the most remarkable aspects of Eric's journey is his ability to remain relatable. Despite his fame, he continues to share his vulnerabilities, his challenges, and his ongoing journey of growth. He reminds his audience that he's still a work in progress, just like them. This openness makes him not just a motivational speaker, but a partner in their journey, a voice that says, "If I can do it, so can you." Eric's life is a living example of the power of faith to transform lives and rewrite destinies. But his story isn't just about his own rise. It's about the light he brings to others. He teaches us that faith isn't just about believing in a higher power. It's about believing in the possibilities within ourselves and in the potential of the people around us. It's about choosing hope over despair, action over excuses, and purpose over comfort. In every speech, every book, and every initiative, Eric Thomas reminds us of a universal truth. No matter how dark it gets, there's always light ahead. His legacy is one of unwavering faith, tireless action, and a commitment to empowering others to reach their full potential. Eric Thomas has shown the world that the power of faith isn't just about transforming a single life. It's about transforming the lives of everyone you touch. And with that said, thanks for watching, and until next time.